I think there are very few people in the world, frankly, that understand what the universal equation for well-being is about, as far as self-discovery, about teamwork, about understanding the importance of transparency, and really living and helping educate and expand the world around understanding these systemic forces. And it is my honor to introduce the first Sylvia and Stephen Family Wellbeing Award winner, Michael Sonnenfeldt. Oh, by the way, this is yours.
Thank you very much. Beautiful. How about a picture before you go? We'll do it later. Thank you. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge 3 people in the room who helped get me to the things that you saw there. The first is Harley Frank. Where are you, Harley? With whom I've worked for 35 years, I think, and whose ideas at Tiger formed the basis for the book that I'm going to begin summarizing tonight. And then Richard Lavin, who was my mentor, my facilitator, my chair, my partner, and my friend for 26 years. It's an honor to have you here. And for those of you who know the Tiger process, we come together in groups, and Greg and I have been in a group for many, many years, and our chair is Joel Treisman over there, who also works with my family. So this is a very intimate gathering, and many of you here tonight have spoken at Tiger meetings. I keep seeing old faces, and it's wonderful for all of the kind words, Greg, that you gave. I'm touched to be allowed tonight to share with you some insights of particular interest to me regarding the family dynamic. I want to share 3 stories with you that are part of the book I've just completed on entrepreneurs that will be out in the stores in May. The first is the story about Betty, a successful investment banker, talking to her older sister, Susie, a retired school teacher, about Pops, who is 93 and in sad decline. Betty asks her older sister, the school teacher, if she has spoken to Pops about getting his estate in order. Older sister Susie, the retired school teacher, says to Betty, the investment banker, "Why are you asking? You're not expecting to get any of Pop's money, are you? You're richer than rich." Betty, incredulous, says to Susie, the retired school teacher, "Susie, are you crazy? I don't remember you ever working the kind of hours that I've worked for 30 years. You've been home at 3 o'clock every afternoon for 40 years. I don't remember you ever working on the weekend, having your job at risk, or flying through the night to make a morning meeting. You're damn right I expect to be the recipient of 1/3 of Pop's estate, and moreover, I'll be damned if our younger brother Howard, the wastrel of the family, gets a penny more than 1/3 of Pop's money for his slovenly ways." Although this is a fantastic way to get a group talking about the difference between equitable distribution and equal distribution, it raises the kind of issues that are created when parents do not leave money on a purely equal basis. My own conclusion, and I think those of many of you, is that any estate plan should generally treat children equally, because an inheritance that is unequally shared has the potential to leave such deep scars in the children who inherit it less, unless there are either truly extenuating circumstances or the reason for the unequal distribution reflects deeply held family values that have been expressed over a long period of time. I'm not talking about children who have medical or developmental issues which might require special trusts after a parent dies, although if the wealth is large enough, an equal share could even solve that problem. I'm referring to situations such as these. A family with a deep belief in public service creates a trust that provides additional support to children who work for the government or as teachers or in some other form of public service. A family with a farm that has been in the family for generations makes special accommodations to support those children who choose to keep working the farm. A family eager to encourage future generations to become members of the clergy provides additional financial support to those who choose that path. Or when one child goes bankrupt and is unable to fully provide for his or her own children, while the other child is vastly more successful, parents set up special trusts for the children of the struggling child. And there are endless variations of reason to treat children equitably rather than equally. But I've learned that such approaches succeed, meaning that the child who receives less, or the children who receive less, feel no less loved or appreciated, only if the parents make their case repeatedly, with clarity, and over a long period of time. It will almost certainly be more likely to succeed when the arrangement is truly based on core values that have sustained the family over a long period of time. This takes work, planning, and organization to have those discussions long enough in advance and frequently enough to counter the otherwise likely damage. And in the best of circumstances, the arrangement can serve as a symbol of pride for the values of the family and those they would like to champion. The second story I want to share with you is about a prospect being considered for member in Tiger 21. The prospect told us that one of his investments was about to generate a huge and incredible payday, and he was searching for how best to consider all of the issues his additional wealth was surely to create. As he talked about what his 20-something-year-old kids were up to, I asked whether he had considered including his children in the original investment when it was made only a few years back, because if it had been, then the adult children might have earned the profits directly, allowing them to avoid the estate tax on those profits that they earned. More broadly, I was asking how much he was thinking about leaving to his children, and he quipped back something akin to, "What? I'm not planning on giving them anything." Now, when talking to first-generation wealth creators who make up most of our organization, who typically come by definition from working or middle-class backgrounds, the concept of tough love is often an effort to recreate the environment that the wealth creator thrived in, so his or her child can have the same opportunity to build character, feel vital, and enjoy personal success gained independently. Of course, all too often, the parent forgets that their child grew up in dramatically better circumstances than they had. And so this form of tough love can feel to the child like having the carpet pulled out from underneath them at a critical moment in their personal development. Just as I was trying not to overreact to one more lecture on tough love that we hear all too often in Tiger, he surprised me by adding, "But I'm prepared to invest everything in them." This was a wow moment. In one simple compound sentence, this successful entrepreneur had crystallized an issue that I suspect all of us have been thinking about for years. He had suddenly changed the paradigm from giving your assets to your kids to investing in their future. Investing implies a partnership and a purpose. It endows the assets that you turn over to children with the expectation of a return, whether emotional, physical, or financial. This formulation allowed me to remove the image of the great multi-generational waterfall of wealth falling from one generation to the next as if governed simply by the laws of gravity and an immutable force. It also opens up possibilities for wise parents to be involved in their kids' evolution in hopefully productive ways, and yes, I know there are potential downfalls from that. But suddenly I saw graduate school costs as investments in the future rather than expenses. I had a new filter for evaluating children's potential business ventures that I might fund or participate in, a yoga studio or a real estate project, or even certain lifestyle enhancements such as a new condominium that might allow a child to live closer to work or in relative safety. So much of our children's happiness and productivity and feelings of self-worth reflect the context in which discussions are had or inheritance transferred. So that moment, I had reframed the conversation I have with our children so that inheritance is not something to be taken for granted, but rather to be used productively for shaping one's future. Of course, every responsible parent wants that for their children, but framing the discussion on how to make the wisest investments for the future has given me a new and far more productive paradigm in which to have such conversations with our kids. And finally, I want to share a third story that follows on the one I have just shared with you. I recently listened in on a conversation between some extremely successful friends. One shared his pleasure and pride in the fact that his kids were all out of college and more or less self-supporting, with some even working in the nonprofit world and living on modest means. Finally, they were off the family dole, said this very proud father. And he asked, but when he was asked if he had offered capital to his kids to allow them to explore other possibilities, he answered that he hadn't because he was sure the kids would call if they really needed his money. Fair enough. But at age 35 or sooner, those same children will each begin to inherit what will eventually be tens of millions of dollars. And if, when inherited, wealth is something they have had no experience learning about or managing, much less thinking about how to best use those financial resources wisely, that could be a truly alien concept. The experience of suddenly inheriting significant sums could lead to shock, waste, or distraction on a monumental scale. The second friend had a son who was grappling with what to do during an upcoming gap year created by a prestigious judicial clerkship that would only begin a year after the son graduates law school with an environmental law degree. The son was wrestling with what he should do during the upcoming gap year: work in a top law firm or volunteer at a public interest law firm? Or should he travel around the globe instead to witness firsthand the havoc that climate change is beginning to wreak? That would give him direct experience of some of the things he would be litigating about in future years, connecting him in a visceral way to his chosen path, perhaps even giving him a real edge in his career. Having favored teaching his kids about being responsible stewards of their wealth, the second father had already transferred significant assets to his children, and he had encouraged his son to consider what would most enhance the trajectory of his career, rather than overweighting being self-sufficient during the gap year. The son's high achievements already earned indicated there was no lack of ambition or discipline. For first-generation wealth creators who have little familiarity with inherited wealth, it is easier to fall back on the important and time-tested values that were the foundations of their own success: good work habits, personal discipline, delayed gratification, and independence high among them. No matter how many generations of wealth are in a family, fostering independence is an important part of any child's emotional evolution. But against this backdrop are the realities that inherited wealth will burden those children in truly unique ways, and equipping them to be good stewards of the wealth they have or will inherit can create some tensions with the equally important goal of fostering their independence. There are no simple answers. I'm not suggesting there are, but I have found that asking the right question is an important start. While I fall on the side of encouraging children who will inherit significant wealth to grapple with how to use that wealth creatively and reasonably to enhance their careers and lives and how to manage it wisely, there really are trade-offs with not putting independence at the top of the list. It's not so much that I don't value the sense of independence that comes with being self-supporting. I believe strongly in the power of independence to shape children's emotional balance, but it is not, if you will excuse the expression, a trump card. It needs to be balanced against other issues present in the life of a child that will inherit significant wealth, and learning good and reasonable stewardship about the wealth is one of them. Of course, talking about investments or inherited wealth can be taken too far or become a substitute for love and affection. I suspect this crowd more than most knows that. But grappling early on with the tensions created by these somewhat competing values can save you years of puzzlement and provide a benchmark for evaluating all other strategies you'll hear from family, friends, and professional advisors about transferring wealth. Don't give your kids anything, but be willing to invest everything in them. See how that fits after trying it on for a while. Which brings me to my conclusion and thanks. Among the other pleasures for me tonight is to see what an amazing journey my friend Greg has been on in shaping and molding RayLigne and the important work the firm is engaged in. Greg has really been a visionary in understanding the family dynamic in multi-generational families and the kinds of support multi-generational families of wealth uniquely need. His holistic view from manager selection to setting goals within a family and the issues I have touched on has been a source of learning for me over the years, and so it is a special pleasure for me to realize the intersection of some of the stories told in my book and the work Greg has dedicated his professional life to. Thank you for this lovely honor. you have given me, and thank you for all the professionals here allowing me to connect the insights and stories to the work you are fortunate to engage in every day. Hopefully, together we can make a small difference for the better, and maybe even have an impact that will produce a small ripple in the greater firmament. Best to you all for a great evening, and thanks so much.